Alex never expected that a simple interaction with a neighbor would change everything. Living in a small apartment in the heart of the city, Alex had grown accustomed to the rhythm of urban life. The constant hum of traffic below his window, the familiar faces he'd pass in the local coffee shop, and the comfortable anonymity that came with being just another face in a crowded building. As a 28-year-old graphic designer, Alex spent most of his days hunched over his desk, creating logos and website layouts for clients who rarely saw his face. The solitude suited him, or at least that's what he told himself on the nights when the silence of his apartment seemed to press in from all sides. The neighborhood had always been described as close-knit, the kind of place where people actually knew their neighbors' names, but Alex had managed to maintain a polite distance from most of the residents in his building. That is, until Jamie moved in across the hall 3 months ago. There was something immediately disarming about Jamie. Perhaps it was the warm smile that seemed to reach his eyes, or the way he carried himself with an easy confidence that Alex had always envied in others. Whatever it was, Alex found himself looking forward to those brief encounters in the hallway or by the mailboxes. Jamie wasn't just any neighbor. He was an artisan candle maker with a small but growing business. His apartment often filled the hallway with intoxicating scents, sometimes warm vanilla and cinnamon, other times fresh linen or rain-soaked earth. Alex would sometimes linger outside his own door, breathing in these scents and wondering about the person who created them. It wasn't just the candles that intrigued Alex. It was Jamie's passionate way of talking about his craft, the way his hands moved expressively when he described a new scent combination he was working on. Their first real conversation happened on a rainy Tuesday evening when Alex was struggling to unlock his door while balancing groceries and his portfolio case. Jamie had appeared seemingly out of nowhere, taking the groceries and holding them while Alex fumbled with his keys. "Looks like you could use an extra pair of hands," Jamie had said, and Alex had been too surprised to do anything but nod gratefully. That brief interaction led to a cup of coffee in Alex's kitchen, which turned into hours of conversation about art, design, and their shared love of obscure indie films. After that night, their encounters became more frequent and less accidental. They'd check in with each other about their days, share takeout when working late, and occasionally meet for breakfast at the cafe on the corner. Alex found himself looking forward to these moments more than he cared to admit, even to himself. There was something about Jamie that made Alex feel seen in a way he hadn't experienced before. It was both thrilling and terrifying. What Alex couldn't quite bring himself to acknowledge was the flutter in his stomach whenever Jamie laughed, or the way his pulse quickened when their hands accidentally brushed. These feelings weren't entirely new to Alex. He'd been attracted to men before, but he'd spent years keeping that part of himself carefully tucked away, hidden even from those closest to him. Growing up in a small conservative town had taught him early on that some parts of himself were better kept private. So he dated women occasionally, had a few relationships that inevitably fizzled out, and told himself that the hollow feeling afterward was just the natural end of any relationship. Jamie, on the other hand, seemed completely comfortable in his own skin. He spoke openly about past boyfriends, displayed rainbow stickers on his candle packaging, and never seemed to question who he was. Alex envied that freedom, that certainty. And perhaps that's why, when Jamie invited him over for a candle-making session one Friday evening, Alex felt both excitement and dread coiling in his stomach. "I thought you might want to see how the magic happens," Jamie had said with that easy smile that made Alex's heart skip. "Plus, I could use a designer's eye on some new labels I'm working on." It was a perfectly innocent invitation, one that friends would extend to each other without a second thought. But as Alex stood in front of his closet that Friday evening, trying to decide what to wear, he knew that something had shifted between them, or perhaps something had shifted within him. Alex finally settled on a simple blue button-down shirt that a former girlfriend had once told him brought out his eyes. He ran his fingers through his dark hair, attempting to tame it into something presentable, and took a deep breath. "It's just candle making," he told himself. "Just two neighbors hanging out." The mantra did little to calm the butterflies in his stomach as he crossed the hallway and knocked on Jamie's door. The door swung open to reveal Jamie, dressed in a soft gray t-shirt and jeans, a smile spreading across his face at the sight of Alex. "Right on time," Jamie said, stepping aside to let Alex in. "I was just setting everything up." Jamie's apartment was the mirror image of Alex's in layout. But that's where the similarities ended. While Alex's place was minimalist and somewhat impersonal, Jamie's home was warm and inviting. Plants occupied every available surface, their green leaves cascading down bookshelves and hanging from macrame holders near the windows. The walls were adorned with a collection of framed vintage posters and local art pieces. But what immediately struck Alex was the scent, a complex blend of fragrances that somehow managed to be both soothing and invigorating. "That smell is amazing," Alex said, inhaling deeply. "Is that one of your candles?" Jamie nodded, leading Alex to the kitchen where a workstation had been set up. "It's a new blend I'm working on, cedarwood, bergamot, and a hint of vanilla. I'm calling it Forest Whisper." "Too pretentious." Alex laughed. "Not at all. It suits it perfectly." He glanced at the array of supplies spread across the counter. Jars of various sizes, blocks of wax, bottles of fragrance oils, and a collection of dried flowers and herbs. "This is quite the operation you have here." "It started as a hobby during a particularly rough breakup," Jamie explained, handing Alex an apron. "I needed something to do with my hands, something creative that wasn't tied to my day job. Before I knew it, I was selling them at farmers markets. Then local boutiques started carrying them, and now I'm actually making enough to consider doing this full-time." As Jamie talked, Alex found himself watching the way Jamie's hands moved confidently among the supplies, the way his eyes lit up when he described a particularly successful scent combination. There was something mesmerizing about someone so completely in their element, so passionate about what they created. "So," Jamie said, clapping his hands together, "ready to get your hands waxy?" The next hour passed in a blur of melting wax, measuring fragrance oils, and learning the precise moment to pour the mixture into waiting jars. Jamie was a patient teacher, guiding Alex's hands when he was unsure, standing close enough that Alex could feel the warmth radiating from his body. Each time their fingers brushed, Alex felt a jolt of electricity that he tried desperately to ignore. "The secret," Jamie explained as they worked, "is in the timing. Pour too hot, and the scent evaporates. Too cool, and you get uneven setting." He placed his hand over Alex's, guiding the pour of a particularly delicate blend. "Like this, slow and steady." Alex nodded, trying to focus on the task and not on the feeling of Jamie's hand on his, or the scent of Jamie's cologne mingling with the candle fragrances. It was becoming increasingly difficult to maintain the pretense that this was just a friendly evening between neighbors. As they finished pouring the last candle, Jamie suggested they take a break while the wax set. "I've got some wine if you're interested. Or beer, tea, whatever you prefer." "Wine sounds great," Alex replied, washing the residual wax from his hands at the kitchen sink. He followed Jamie to the living room, where a comfortable-looking sofa faced a wall of bookshelves. Jamie gestured for him to sit while he disappeared briefly, returning with 2 glasses of deep red wine. "To successful candle making," Jamie said, raising his glass in a toast. "And to patient teachers," Alex added, clinking his glass against Jamie's. The wine was rich and smooth, warming Alex from the inside as he took a sip. The tension he'd been carrying in his shoulders began to ease as they fell into conversation, discussing everything from favorite books to dream vacations. There was an ease to talking with Jamie that Alex had rarely experienced with anyone else. It was as if they'd known each other for years rather than months. As the evening progressed, Jamie lit several candles around the living room, dimming the overhead lights. The flickering flames cast a warm, golden glow across the space, creating shadows that danced across Jamie's features. In this light, with the wine warming his veins and Jamie's laughter filling the air, Alex felt something inside him begin to unfurl, a longing he'd kept tightly bound for so long that he'd almost forgotten it existed. "These candles are amazing," Alex said, watching the play of light across the room. "You've really created something special here." Jamie smiled, the candlelight reflecting in his eyes. "Thank you. That means a lot, especially coming from someone with your artistic eye." He hesitated for a moment, then added, "You know, I've been wanting to invite you over for weeks now. I just wasn't sure if you'd be interested." There was something in Jamie's tone that made Alex look up sharply. The air between them seemed to thicken, charged with unspoken possibilities. "Interested in candle making?" Alex asked, though he knew that wasn't what Jamie meant. Jamie held his gaze steadily. "In spending time with me. Like this." He gestured vaguely to the intimate setting around them. Alex's heart hammered against his ribs. This was the moment, the precipice he'd been approaching since the day Jamie moved in. He could step back, laugh it off, maintain the safety of friendship and denial. Or he could take a leap into the unknown, into authenticity. "I've been interested since the day you helped me with my groceries," Alex admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I just didn't know how to say it. Or if I should say it." Jamie set his wine glass down and shifted closer on the sofa. "Why wouldn't you say it?" Alex stared into his wine, searching for the right words. "I haven't been. I've never really." He took a deep breath. "I've never let myself acknowledge this part of me. Not publicly, anyway." Understanding dawned in Jamie's eyes. "Alex," he said gently, "there's no timeline for figuring yourself out. No right or wrong way to be who you are. I know that. Logically, I know that," Alex said, finally looking up to meet Jamie's gaze. "But knowing something and feeling it are two different things. I've spent so long hiding this part of myself that I'm not sure I know how to let it out." Jamie nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Can I tell you something? When I first came out, I was terrified. I was convinced I'd lose friends, that my family would reject me, that my whole life would fall apart." He smiled ruefully. "Some of that did happen. I lost people I thought would always be there. But what I gained was so much more valuable, the freedom to be completely myself." As Jamie spoke, Alex found himself drawn not just to his words, but to the conviction behind them, the quiet strength that seemed to radiate from him. Here was someone who had faced his fears and emerged stronger, more authentic. "I've dated women," Alex confessed. "And it was fine, pleasant enough. But there was always something missing, something that didn't quite click. And then there were these moments. Attractions I wouldn't let myself fully acknowledge." "Like what?" Jamie asked, his voice soft in the candlelit room. Alex laughed nervously. "Like the captain of my college swim team. Or my roommate's brother who stayed with us one summer. Or," he hesitated, then finished, "or the neighbor across the hall who makes amazing candles and has the most genuine smile I've ever seen." The words hung in the air between them, impossible to take back. Alex's heart pounded so loudly he was sure Jamie must hear it. But instead of the awkwardness he feared, Jamie's face broke into that very smile he'd just described. "For what it's worth," Jamie said, "I've been hoping you'd say something like that since the day I moved in." The candles flickered around them, casting dancing shadows across the walls as they sat in the charged silence that followed. Alex was acutely aware of how close they were sitting, of the warmth of Jamie's leg just inches from his own, of the way Jamie's eyes seemed to search his face for something. "What happens now?" Alex asked, his voice barely audible over the sound of his own heartbeat. Jamie reached out slowly, giving Alex plenty of time to pull away if he wanted to, and placed his hand gently on Alex's. "Whatever you want to happen. There's no rush, no pressure." But in that moment, with the candles burning low and Jamie's hand warm against his, Alex didn't want to wait anymore. He'd spent years waiting, years denying this part of himself. With a courage he didn't know he possessed, he leaned forward. The first touch of their lips was gentle, tentative, a question rather than a statement. But when Jamie responded, his hand coming up to cup Alex's face, the kiss deepened into something more certain. Alex felt as though something long dormant within him had suddenly awakened, stretching toward the light like a plant too long kept in darkness. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Alex was surprised to find himself smiling. Not the nervous smile he'd expected, but something genuine and unguarded. Jamie's answering smile was equally bright, his eyes crinkling at the corners in a way that made Alex's heart flip. "That was," Alex began, struggling to find words adequate to describe the tumult of emotions coursing through him. "Worth waiting for," Jamie finished for him, his thumb tracing a gentle pattern on Alex's hand. They talked late into the night, the candles burning low around them as they shared stories they'd never told anyone else. Jamie's struggle with his religious family's rejection, Alex's fear of disappointing his parents, the loneliness they'd both felt even when surrounded by people who loved them but didn't fully know them. With each confession, each vulnerability shared, Alex felt something shifting inside him, as though pieces of himself that had been misaligned for years were finally settling into their proper places. It was nearly dawn when Alex finally returned to his own apartment, his lips still tingling from Jamie's goodbye kiss. As he lay in bed, Watching the first gray light of morning filter through his blinds, he realized that for the first time in his adult life, he felt completely present in his own skin, not hiding, not pretending, just existing as his whole self. The days that followed took on a dreamlike quality. Alex and Jamie moved cautiously at first, both aware of the newness and fragility of what was growing between them. They continued their candle-making sessions, now interspersed with lingering touches and stolen kisses. They explored the neighborhood together, finding hidden parks and tucked-away cafes that became their special places. And gradually, Alex began to shed the protective layers he'd built around himself. The first time Jamie took his hand in public, a simple gesture as they walked through the farmer's market on a Sunday morning, Alex felt a momentary panic rise in his chest. He glanced around, certain that everyone was staring, judging. But the world continued to turn. People browsed vegetable stands and chatted with vendors, completely uninterested in two men holding hands. And in that moment, Alex realized how much energy he'd wasted worrying about the opinions of strangers. Their first official date was at a small Italian restaurant a few blocks from their building. Jamie had insisted on doing things properly, as he put it, even though they'd already spent countless evenings in each other's apartments. There was something sweetly old-fashioned about his insistence on picking Alex up at his door, presenting him with a small candle he'd made specially for the occasion. A blend of scents that Jamie said reminded him of their first kiss. It's bergamot and cedar, like that night, but I added a hint of cardamom, Jamie explained as Alex inhaled the fragrance. It's warm and unexpected, like you. At the restaurant, over plates of pasta and glasses of wine, Alex found himself sharing things he'd never voiced aloud. His childhood dream of becoming an illustrator rather than a commercial designer. His secret desire to move to a cabin in the mountains someday. His fear that he'd spend his life creating art for other people's visions rather than his own. So why don't you? Jamie asked, twirling pasta around his fork. Pursue illustration, I mean. Alex shrugged. Security, I guess. Commercial design pays the bills. Illustration is competitive, uncertain, says the man talking to someone who quit his stable office job to make candles for a living. Jamie replied with a grin. That's different. You're braver than I am. Jamie reached across the table, taking Alex's hand. I don't think that's true. I think you're incredibly brave. Coming out later in life takes courage. Being vulnerable with someone new takes courage. His eyes held Alex's steadily. I think maybe you just haven't given yourself permission to be brave in all areas of your life yet. Those words stayed with Alex long after the date ended, echoing in his mind as he lay in bed that night. What would it look like to give himself permission to be brave? To pursue what he truly wanted, not just in his personal life, but in his career, his dreams, his future? The weeks turned into months, and with each passing day, Alex felt himself growing more comfortable in his new reality. He introduced Jamie to his small circle of friends, nervous at first about how they would react to this unexpected development in his life. But their warm acceptance, the way they seamlessly incorporated Jamie into their game nights and weekend brunches, further dissolved the fears that had kept Alex isolated for so long. The first real test came when Alex's parents announced they would be visiting the city. He'd spoken to them weekly since moving away, but had never mentioned Jamie, never hinted at the transformation taking place in his life. As the date of their visit approached, Alex found himself plagued with anxiety. What if they hate me? He asked Jamie one night as they lay tangled together on Jamie's couch, half watching a movie neither of them was paying attention to. What if this changes everything between us? Jamie ran his fingers soothingly through Alex's hair. It might change things, he acknowledged. Big truths often do. But hiding who you are, who we are to each other, that changes things too. It changes how you feel about yourself, about us. In the end, Alex decided to tell his parents over dinner on the second night of their visit. He chose a public place, hoping the restaurant setting would temper any extreme reactions. His hands shook as he formed the words, his voice barely audible over the clinking of silverware and murmur of surrounding conversations. Mom, Dad, there's someone important in my life. Someone I've been seeing for a few months now. He took a deep breath. His name is Jamie. The silence that followed seemed to stretch for an eternity. Alex watched his parents' faces, trying to read their reactions. His mother's eyes widened slightly, while his father's expression remained unreadable. Is this? His mother began, then paused to find the right words. Is this new for you? Being attracted to men? Alex shook his head. No, it's not new. It's just the first time I've allowed myself to act on it. To be honest about it. Another silence, this one heavy with unasked questions. Finally, his father cleared his throat. Are you happy, son? The simplicity of the question caught Alex off guard. He'd prepared for anger, confusion, biblical references, but not this straightforward inquiry about his happiness. Yes, he answered, surprised by the steadiness in his voice. Happier than I've been in a long time. His father nodded slowly. Then we'll need to meet this Jamie. It wasn't immediate acceptance. There were awkward moments, uncomfortable questions, and a palpable sense that his parents were struggling to reconcile the son they thought they knew with the one sitting before them. But they were trying. And for Alex, that effort meant everything. Jamie met his parents the following evening, bringing a specially crafted candle as a gift, a clean, fresh scent that wouldn't overwhelm his mother's sensitive nose, which Alex had mentioned in passing weeks earlier. It was this thoughtful detail that seemed to win his mother over, while his father warmed to Jamie during a lengthy discussion about sustainable business practices. As Alex watched Jamie charming his parents, fitting so naturally into this part of his life that had been separate for so long, he felt a surge of emotion so powerful it nearly overwhelmed him. This was what it meant to live authentically, to bring together all the pieces of himself that he'd kept carefully compartmentalized, to allow the people he loved to know him fully. When his parents left to return to their hotel that night, his mother hugged him tightly. He's lovely, Alex, she whispered. And it's good to see you so happy. His father's handshake was firmer than usual, his eyes conveying what he couldn't quite put into words, that regardless of his confusion, his love remained unchanged. Later that night, as Alex recounted the evening to Jamie, he found himself overcome with emotion. I never thought it could be like this, he admitted, wiping away tears that had appeared without warning. I spent so many years afraid of what would happen if people knew the real me. And now you know that the real you is pretty damn lovable, Jamie finished, pulling him close. 6 months into their relationship, on a crisp autumn evening, Jamie invited Alex over for what he described as a special candle unveiling. Alex arrived to find Jamie's apartment transformed. Dozens of candles illuminated the space, their combined glow creating an almost otherworldly atmosphere. A trail of rose petals led from the door to the living room, where Jamie stood nervously beside a single unlit candle. What's all this? Alex asked, taking in the scene with amazement. Jamie took his hand, leading him to the center of the room. I wanted to create something that captured how I feel about you, about us. Something that tells our story. He gestured to the unlit candle. This is it. Alex examined the candle, larger than Jamie's usual creations, housed in a hand-blown glass vessel that shimmered in the surrounding candlelight. The label bore no name, just a simple illustration of 2 intertwined flames. It's beautiful, Alex said. What's it called? Jamie smiled, a hint of nervousness in his eyes. That depends on you, actually. He reached for a matchbook, striking a match that flared brightly in the dimly lit room. May I? Alex nodded, curious about the ceremony Jamie had created around this particular candle. As the wick caught fire, a familiar scent began to fill the air, bergamot and cedar, the foundation of their first kiss. But as the candle burned, new notes emerged, cardamom from their first date, sea salt from their weekend at the coast, pine from the Christmas tree they'd decorated together. It was their relationship distilled into fragrance, a timeline of their love story told through scent. Jamie, Alex breathed, overwhelmed by the thought and care that had gone into creating such a personal gift. This is incredible. There's more, Jamie said, his voice soft. He reached beneath the table and produced a small box. I was thinking we could call it Forever, if that's something you might want. Alex's breath caught as Jamie opened the box to reveal 2 simple silver bands. Jamie, I know it's fast, Jamie said quickly. And I'm not saying we need to rush into anything. But I love you, Alex. I love the person you are, the person you're becoming. I love watching you step more fully into yourself every day. He took a deep breath. I want to build a life with you, whenever you're ready. Alex looked from the rings to Jamie's hopeful face, illuminated by the candle that contained their history. In that moment, All the fears and doubts that had plagued him throughout his life seemed to dissolve in the warm glow surrounding them. This was what courage looked like, not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward despite it. Yes, he said simply, his voice steady and sure. Yes to forever. As Jamie slipped the ring onto his finger, Alex was struck by how far he'd come from that anxious man who had stood in front of his closet, agonizing over what to wear to a candle-making session. The journey hadn't always been easy. There had been difficult conversations with old friends who didn't understand, moments of doubt when internalized shame reared its ugly head, days when stepping into his new truth felt overwhelming. But there had also been joy, profound, unfiltered joy that came from finally allowing himself to be whole. There had been freedom in shedding the careful performance he'd maintained for so long. And there had been love, not just from Jamie, but a deeper love for himself that grew with each authentic choice he made. As they sealed their commitment with a kiss, surrounded by the light of dozens of candles, Alex thought about how appropriate it was that their story had begun with Jamie's craft. Like the candles Jamie created, their love had started with a spark, unexpected and bright, that had grown into something warm and sustaining, something that illuminated the darkness and made everything more beautiful in its light. And as they held each other in that golden glow, Alex knew with certainty that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Two flames, distinct but intertwined, burning all the brighter for having found each other. Total _char_count, 18,897.